Hey, this is Russ McClellan with Small Towns Unscripted. Thanks for tuning in. We're at the Sunset Marina one more time, and I just wanted to let everybody know during the off season, and I think through maybe April into April, you can rent this facility from them. Just get a hold of Jolene Baker at Caldwell Banker. I think their number 682-7777. But as you can see, it's a great location. It's a lot of fun. Do your events, poker games, weddings. In fact, I got married here, so it's a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. All right, hey, Al Brooks, welcome to Small Towns Unscripted, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, this is Nicole Turner. I'm Russ McClellan. We've known each other a while.
We've known each other for a while. Yes, we have.
Yeah, so sometimes we like to share why we do this podcast. So for people that are just tuning in, maybe they just see it for the first time. But the idea basically has two parts to it. One of them is this town's changing.
Yes.
And there's a lot of new faces coming, especially since COVID. But it's always changing. It always has changed, as you know. You've been here a long time. And we feel like if you get to know people instead of just of them a little bit, you have a little more in common than you might have realized, and maybe there's a little less judgment and a little more empathy and sympathy and compassion. So trying to unite the community. The other one is really more personal for our guests, and that is just to capture the authentic stories.
Sure.
And history. And that way your grandkids or even great-great-grandkids that aren't born yet can look back and go, there's old Grandpa Al Brooks right there.
Well, this area, as you know, has a lot of history.
Yeah.
Going way, way back.
Yeah.
And I've just been a small part of it, but it's been a great ride.
Yeah, well, we were neighbors for a long time when I grew up out there on Washington Street. Let's start with where were your parents or grandparents? Where did that all originate?
Okay, originally, I was born in Rapid City, South Dakota. Then we moved just as I was an infant over to Lake Stevens, where they had a secondary home. And going back just a little bit further than my parents, which were Roy and Gertrude Brooks, was their parents. And on my mother's side, her father was the chief engineer and track layer for the Great Northern Railroad. Oh, wow. Worked with I think his name is J.J. Hill. They actually established the route from Quincy to Wenatchee and then on over Stevens Pass. And then on my father's side, they were loggers up in Bow Hill and over at Mount Vernon. Worked in a lot of the mills, and so we came from a very working type environment. You were expected as a child, you had chores to perform and do, and we had our small place we had there at Lake Stevens, which was probably about 10 to 15 acres. Started out as chicken farmers. We actually raised them eggs for the Washington Co-op. We had approximately 10,000 layers, so you knew what my job was after school. And then when both my parents worked out of the home besides having the chickens. My mom was actually a postmistress at Lake Stevens, which will play a real good role here in a few minutes. And then, of course, my dad worked as a school bus driver, and then we had the farm besides. And the farm going back to my childhood years. You got out of school, you came home, you had chores to do. One of my chores was to start the evening meal, because they would come home and they were, of course, tired. And that's what I was asked to have done. Also, we had wood heat for our initial heat, and I was expected to keep the fire going in our big fireplace and do whatever else needed to be done.
Did you grow up with brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister. Her name was Janice, and it was Janice Asplin, and they had Asplin's Mountaineering in Wenatchee.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And they're both now, of course, looking down on us. But some great experiences there, but she was a lot older than I was. She was at least 12 to 14 years older than I was. So by the time I got up to a certain age, she had already moved out of the home. Mm-hmm. We originally, like I said, ended up in Lake Stevens originally. And then after Lake Stevens, we moved over to Wenatchee. We had a home up on Birch Mountain. We were one of the last houses up on Birch Mountain at that time, at the end of the blacktop. And I graduated from Lake Stevens High School in 1965. That's important to me because in 1964 to 65 is when the Uncle Sam decided to implement the draft.
Oh,
Vietnam, yeah.
And so getting back to my mom as being postmistress, after I had graduated, I came over here and I worked in the apples for the fall. Was going to go to Wenatchee Valley College. I like to play football a lot. And so I thought that's where I was going to go. Well, my birthday is January the 12th. And here comes my mom through the door, and she says, well, son, happy birthday. And lay before me on my 18th birthday was the draft notice.
Oh.
Uncle Sam wants you. Well, they wanted me right away because I was to report for induction on the 23rd of January,
Wow.
which was my mom's birthday. And so we talked it over as a family, and I said, well, there's no getting out of this. And so I went up, and instead of becoming drafted, I went ahead and enlisted. It gave me an extra year, but it gave me the insight of one, where I would probably end up being, but two, it would end up with the type of work that I would do in the Army. And I wanted to be a medic, but I ended up as an MP. Now, how they can get medic and MP mixed up, I don't know, but they're real close as far as their assortment goes.
So you went to the Army for 3 years?
3 years.
Yeah.
I did not go to Vietnam on paper. I did go there my last year, but it was in a role that is kind of hard for me because I was work security up in Alaska, up at the Clear Radar Dome, up on the North Slope. But then when my time was up for that and came back into the States, they put me in the VIP escort duty. But unfortunately, the VIP escort duty was as we went to Cameron Bay, we flew over, and of course in the big KC-135s and the big planes, we came back with the nickel coffins. That was our boys. And my job was to go with an officer or a chaplain out to the different homes throughout the United States to accompany our servicemen. So that left quite an impression on me.
Were you the one actually notifying them that they had lost?
No, I was not. That was already taken care of by the military.
Yeah.
But I was one of the first ones that showed up in a uniform at their doorstep.
And you're 18, 19?
At that time, I would have been 19 to 20 because I was actually drafted on my 18th birthday. Hard to believe you're in high school your senior year, and in that same following year, now you're in the military.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very hard.
I'm always curious about that Vietnam conflict and the people that were there. You know, you read about it, and it was like a divide, right? There was the patriotism side and the guys that had to go overseas and fight and do all the work, and then there was the people back home that didn't, were the opposite.
That was the tough part, was coming back home. Even coming back home where I did, even though I was not a soldier over there per se, because we were only there for less than 24 hours. We'd land and then take back up and come back to the Presidio in San Francisco is where we would land into. But it was very hard because I lost a lot of my friends. It's very emotional for me to go down to the Vietnam Memorial Wall, especially the one that they have traveling. If anybody has never done that, they need to do that. They really do. It'll really open your eyes up. But anyway, not directly involved as far as being in combat goes, but still affected by it.
Yeah, you did your part. I mean,
and
we'll appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. But that's sad that you lost even friends and stuff.
A lot of friends, a lot of kids in school. At that time, in our senior class, we had about I want to say probably about 49 to 51 boys, and we lost over 20 in Vietnam out of that 49 or 50
class. Wow.
In our class. Just in the different branches of the military they were in. So it affected you, and I still think about it to this day. It's not something you will ever forget. Moving on from that, I married the love of my life when I turned 21 was getting out of the military. That was my wife, Sharon. Because we hadn't spent a lot of time together before we decided to have a family, we did some traveling. We went up to Alaska and came back and quite a bit. Well, in our routes of traveling, we had gone through the Chelan area and we had remarked about how beautiful it was. And so when I did come back, which was only just a few months later, General Telephone Company had an opening in Wenatchee. They actually had 2 openings. They had one here in Chelan and then the one in Wenatchee. Well, I took the one in Chelan because I could remember just the type of community we had. Very special back in those days from the standpoint that everybody up here knew everybody. Mm-hmm. Manson probably in 1969, this would be the latter part of 1969, Manson had a population of probably less than 200. It was really small. Wow. And Chelan probably had less of a population than 500.
Wow.
So you could actually, coming down what we refer to as Dairy Hill or above Pat and Mike's, coming down from Wenatchee, you could literally count pretty much the lights around the lake. That was before there was no Chelan Hills. There was none of the developments you see today. But what was unique and beautiful about this area was the fact that everybody cared. Mm-hmm. And if somebody was sick, there were several people who would come by the house, bring whatever was needed. You never locked a door. You never locked a car. You knew everybody by their first and last name, and that was important, but it was just a community that was really together. There was no really division at all. It's still the same Manson Highway. That hasn't changed in all 8 years, except for the traffic, because I can remember as a young person driving back and forth and never seeing another car. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it was a wonderful time. This is where my wife and I settled. We had 2 boys, Troy and Jason. They both graduated from Chelan, although Jason was a little more of the redneck. Because Jason, he loved to hunt and fish. Yeah. Loved it. It was his passion. And so if they didn't have quite the courses he wanted in Chelan, well, I'm going to Manson.
Oh, that's funny.
And so he would go to Manson for a semester or a year and then come back to Chelan. But they both graduated from Chelan and have done very well for themselves.
Did you what was your first home? Was it in Chelan or Manson?
Our first home was on Botsky Avenue. Mm. We paid $45 a month for rent. We were only making I think $2.25 an hour for the phone company. My job for the phone company was pretty much a general repair, installer type telephone situation. Mm-hmm. It was a big family really down here because you had your operators, which I'll try to cover here in a few seconds. Yeah. But as far as the kids growing up, they grew up in both communities. There are people that I really honor that have helped me through the years. I became a single parent fairly early in life. I had Jason when he came to me when he was 6 and Troy when he was 8. Their mother had other ideas and we'll leave it at that. Mm. But at the same time, it was kind of like we were known as the 3 amigos in a round. Everywhere we went, we were always together and always doing things together. And the boys, of course, played sports, and we knew Russ and his family out there in Manson, and we ended up bouncing from home to home, really, as far as where we moved from. We moved all around the Manson area and here in the Chelan area. So I had both boys, and they were, again, 6 and 8. And there's a family here that I will really want to mention that helped me through the growing pains of raising boys. Mm. And that was Bob and Karen Sweeney.
Oh, yeah.
They were into the rodeos and the FFA and 4-H, and that's the direction both the boys went. And without Karen and Bob's help, I don't know how I could have had the wonderful turnout of the boys I had, because I'm very, very proud of them.
Yeah, we got into that with Karen and my dad and Jim Sackett, and
All those people.
All the Kyle Conaway, Dean Conaway, and all the guys. There was the Ools family. I mean, we were rodeoing and hanging out at the Saddle Club, and it was quite the childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun.
Just a wonderful time. Raising animals, raising kids. Just had a great time. The boys, of course, went through the school system, did very well, graduated. Just before they graduated, I met my wife, Sharon. We were married in 1990. I'd have to say the love of my life, at least the laughter of my life. She had 3 children, all older, except for Brandy, which was the same age as Jason. Neither one of those two wanted us to get married because they were so used to having their ways at home with just dad or just mom. But it turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful marriage. And we're, of course, still married and still full of laughter and love.
So how did you meet her?
Sharon and her family had a flower shop in Chelan called the Ladybug Floral.
I remember that.
And whenever I was to go out on a date, I always brought my date a flower. Okay? I'm old school. You open the door for the girl, you complimented her, and yes. And so where would I buy my flowers? Down at the Ladybug. Well, I knew that Sharon had a few rough times, but she was certainly a very feisty redhead, and really had caught my eye. And we dated for a while, and then decided, we're really a good match for each other. And so we went ahead and got married, and that was in 1990.
Wow, that's so cute.
But back to the telephone days. Let's go back a little bit beyond that, because this is interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Because back in the telephone days, when I first started here, we had first the old ring down lines, which is the old walnut phone with the little speaker that stuck out from the wall. Usually there was only one per house, and you would pick it up and you would talk to the operator, and you really didn't say what number you wanted. You would say who you wanted. I want to talk to old Doc Fisher, or I want to talk to the police department, or whatever. So they just had a big switchboard, which is over at the help me out here.
Is it at the museum right now?
Museum. It's
Yeah.
over at the museum, the big switchboard.
There you go.
And so they also became part of raising the boys, because the office was down here in Chelan, and at the time they were going to school down in Chelan, they would go over to the office and wait for me to get off work, if Bob and Karen didn't pick them up and take them up to their place.
I thought you were going to say, like, somebody would call and go, "Hey, those kids for Al Brooks' kids are in my yard. God's a problem."
That came on later as they got older. Yes. Where are those Brooks kids
See,
at?
I always wondered how my dad knew where everything was happening. Like, before,
It was the phone?
Those operators and the party lines. I want to talk to you about the party lines. How that worked.
Okay, so we moved out of that era, but moving out of that era to where we went to a dial phone, which was a party line, still a party line phone. There were 10 parties to a line, and you had different rings for different people on your line. If your ring was 2 shorts, then you knew that call was for you. And
oh my gosh, that's what that means. Because Russ talks about all the time. My dad had 2 shorts and a long, and I'm like, what does that even? Like, I thought that's actually how you dialed. I didn't know that's your number.
What was a sad thing that happened is those beautiful walnut old style telephones.
Put that thing in your ear.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
We actually took them out of Bridgeport and Mansfield. I was part of the team that went in and did that. And you're not going to believe where they ended up. They were all thrown in the back of a dump truck, backed up to the Bridgeport ramp in Bridgeport, and dumped in the Columbia River. No. Do you know what those were worth today?
Wait,
and I mean,
what?
we probably dumped 100 or 150 of them in the river.
Wow.
Of course, we didn't think about environmental things back
Maybe
in
they're
that
fish
day.
habitat now.
They're fish habitat. Well, we were
like stumps,
But that would actually be cool to see if they're like still kind of down there with coral or who knows what's on there.
So as things progressed, we got the first actual telephones that you could call a telephone, even though it was a party line. It came in one color. You came in your choice of a desk phone or a wall phone. That was it. And you could only have one. And so there was only one per house, except the doctors and the police chief or fire chief, they had two. One was a fire phone, the other one was their own phone.
Did they buy that right from the phone company?
Nothing was bought from the phone company. You rented them from the phone company.
Rented them from the phone company.
Yeah, the average cost for a month of rent for the phone company was about $4.50 to $5 a month. From the phone company. But that came with a lot of perks that you don't get today. You get to see me. you get pretty much everything was repaired for free. If you needed a new phone, there was no question. You got a new phone. If your line broke outside your house, we came out and repaired it. There were no hidden charges. Even when we went with buried service, there was no hidden charges. So a lot of things developed to where we were part of the community because we were helping, because we were giving these services. I don't want to say we were giving them away because we didn't think of it at that time. Nowadays, you wouldn't be in business and be able to have that kind of a event happen. You couldn't give things away.
Yeah.
So moving on, so we had all the operators here. There was about 20 to 25 operators. At any one time, there would be 4 to 5 in the main office down here. Worked with people like Orville Bell, Pat Mosier, Lyle Johnson. When I started out here, there were 3 of us, what we call repairmen installers. There were 2 cable splicers, 1 line crew, one manager, and then you had your operators. And Peg Gordon was the head operator. And she was actually on the switchboard when the bus went in the lake up here. She remembers taking that call.
Wow.
And I remember them telling me about the stories about that.
We had Bob Watson on the podcast, and he was one of the kids
that actually survived it.
Yeah.
He told us about the kid that went to the phone, like that was on the telephone pole.
Yep.
There was a phone on the telephone pole that he called it in.
Well, that was back in the days when we had pay phones here. I mean, all the way from 1970s all the way up through 1999, 2000, we had pay phones. You go anywhere and find a pay phone. Now you can't find a pay. Go try to find a pay phone somewhere.
Yeah, they don't exist no more.
We talk about that with real estate agents that are, didn't have that. But when I started, you'd go to a town to sell real estate. You'd have a gas station map and have to find a pay phone if you got lost, and
Well, we had that experience happen to us this last weekend. With my wife and I, we were in Wenatchee, and a guy pulled up alongside of it and says, "Hey, you've got a tire that's starting to go flat." Where do you go get air nowadays?
Oh.
To put in your tire. We finally found a place, but they were reluctant to give us air, but it was a service station. But we were able to get our tire aired up. Luckily, we got the problem taken care of. But just little things like that.
You must have had those 20 operators must have been sworn to secrecy.
Well, actually,
it's like the Facebook of the day, right?
Back to when we were talking about the operators, once a month we'd have potluck. Well, I weighed 175 pounds when I came here, and when I left, I was a lot heavier than that.
Good potluck.
Oh, those gals knew how to cook.
Oh, I love that.
And wonderful gals. We have only 3 or 4 that I think are still alive today that I can remember. One of them would be Rena McClellan, and Linda McClellan was her daughter. And then there was, I'm trying to think of some of the different gals that were still. There was the Blackburn family, but I believe they've all passed on. They were all homeowners or home people. I mean, they came from the homes. There was no specialty job. It was you were an operator, and you came in and you would work shifts. As an operator, they did it 24/7 because they had to have an operator on duty even at night. What was neat though about the operators, if the fire siren went off, which was the big tower, there's one in Manson above the old fire station and one here in Chelan. When it'd go off, people would just pick up the phone and ask the operator, "Well, where's the fire at?" Because they were the first ones to know, because they're the ones that would set the fire siren off.
Wow.
They had a button they would push and the fire siren would go off.
And it would go off every, like, at noon too, right?
It would go off on noon.
Yeah.
But everybody knew that except for the visitors.
Better hope you don't have a fire at noon.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You got to keep that thing going.
But some of the characters in the valley, I'll touch base a little bit about that. And I don't mean to be jumping around, but
We
some
call
of
it
these things.
unscripted, Al, for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
You're
all
allowed to
good.
jump around as much as you need.
Well, I want to, when we're talking about the town and we're talking about the people in the town, there's one story that really kind of stands out, and that is his name was Wally Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
And Wally was a lot of fun, and he had a P-51 Mustang, and he loved to get people excited. And I can remember the one event where he came with that P-51 Mustang, and he came along this lake at about 50 feet off the top of the water. And then he shot right up Wooden Avenue and then did what we refer to as a barrel roll up Wooden Avenue. People thought that he was going to crash, and he went jumping into the stores.
Oh, boy.
I guess that's one way to get somebody in your store.
Yeah, right.
But it was talked about for a long, long time.
Right.
And when we're going to talk about stores, I want to give a real shout out. There's one store here that really needs recognition, and that is Kelly's Hardware. They have been here. You can go in that store. They are very, very helpful. And all I can say is if there's something that you have a question on, Pat and his crew will find the answer.
You know, it's funny. We had Pat on the podcast. It's a great episode. I mean, he's an amazing
It's
guy.
a fantastic podcast.
It is, and he's such a genuine person. But he got into the he was really big into selling those decorative phones. You know.
Yes.
And he said he loved that, and they got so popular. And I think he was debating with Gene whether they should get into that or something. And he goes, then they just took off. Everybody had to have a Mickey Mouse
Yep. And they were a nightmare to work on.
Oh.
and they even had the ones in the little cigar box with the style on the outside.
Yeah.
But to take them apart to work on them, because one of the things that we had here in this valley, they all came with one generic ringer in them. But as the phone industry developed, each phone number had a distinct bell inside. And I can remember the correlation of how the bells were played out. They were 66, 25, 33, 45, and 66. And a 50, there was a 50 in there. And so you had to take the guts out of the phone, put the new ringer in that would match their line, and then put everything back together.
So when you bought a phone,
and
you had to call
and we had to come out and get it correlated or brought up to snuff. And it's probably one of the reasons why eventually I did leave the phone company and retire in 2003 after about 34 years with the phone company. It was just getting too hard for me to keep up. Yeah. We went from a phone on the wall to where every person in the house had their own phone in their own bedroom with jacks that you could plug in, extension cords that would run down the hallway, out the door, and over to the neighbors if you had to. I mean, there were a lot of times those phones went down the hallway and into the bathroom so you could have privacy, so you could talk on the phone.
I got in trouble more than once growing up.
Why? What would you do?
Well, I'd take one of those, when the flip phones were popular, I had one of those cool flip phones, right? And then my dad would tell me,
But it was still a house phone, right?
Yeah, it was a house phone, but I'd be like calling my buddies, and it'd be after bedtime, and I'd sneak the phone, and so he'd hear me talking. And I remember one time he ripped it out of the wall, and then he probably had to call Al because he broke the.
Probably.
He crushed the phone, I think, that day. He's like, "Well, we have to solve this problem."
Oh, that's
no more phone
hilarious.
So moving off from the phones, actually, Codes of Radio got quite a story on me at one time. It was the day before Christmas. It was actually Christmas Eve. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening, and at that time, I was a repairman. I was up a pole over here by where the Judy Jane Bakery was with my bright red suit on. And somebody had called into the radio station and said Santa Claus was stuck on a pole and they needed to send somebody over to help him.
Oh, that's cute.
For people that don't know Judy Jane, that's where Starbucks is now.
That's where Starbucks is at now. Yeah. And we miss that store, that business also.
100%.
100%.
Those maple bars were something else.
That's where this around my middle came from.
That and Pollux.
Oh. But anyway, that was one of the, working for the phone company was probably the best job I could ever have. I got to meet everybody. Yeah. I was in almost everybody's home. You felt like you were helping people that were in need. It paid an okay wage, but it had good benefits.
Did they let you go hunting when you wanted to go?
They let me go hunting because many of the other people did not hunt. So I was one of the few that was allowed to take my vacation during the hunting season, and it just was a great job to be a part of the community. Then we branched out and we took on, as the role came about where they started eliminating jobs, we started taking on towns like Mansfield and Waterville and Brewster and Bridgeport, and so I'd spend a lot of time out of the valley into those other communities, which I got to know. And probably what broke the straw that broke the camel's back, and I probably am saying that all wrong, because I've been known to say, is when Verizon took over the phone company, it quit being your local phone company. It became more of a business.
Yeah.
And they had downsized to the point where I was the only telephone guy here in the valley at one time. We did hire a couple more, and you traveled a lot. And what really was the end of my era of working for the phone company is I was sent up to Tonasket from here. They had one man that worked in Tonasket, one man in Republic. I worked here. We had one guy up in Brewster, and his name was Hank Baker. And also we had a gentleman here who was our splicer, and that was Tim Young. Tim is still here.
Yeah, Tim's a great guy.
Yeah,
and
great
wife,
guy.
A beautiful couple.
And I was sent up to Tonasket at about, maybe about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a lady who was up out of Chesaw, elderly lady, and her phone quit working. We never turned our back, no matter how late it was, to try to get somebody's phone working, because we knew what it meant to them. I was on my way up to what they call the Sitzmark ski area, and we had, at that day in time, just in the late 90s, they had what they call a bag phone.
Oh yeah.
Big bag phone in your car, in your truck, car. Yeah. And I had gotten a call, and I was to stop right where I was at, and I was to turn around and come back to Chelan. I was to leave her out of service, and they were not going to authorize any overtime because they were under their budget, or over their budget. And so I did that. Luckily, we were able to get her in service the next day, but that kind of told me that this is not fun anymore.
Not about people anymore.
Not fun.
Yeah.
It was like the old saying, the business kind of followed from larger town to larger town. We were first routed out of Wenatchee to the outlying areas of where we were supposed to go on our daily trips. Then from there, it went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. From Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, it went to Everett. Now that's the regional hub where they map out where you're going to go work that day. Then from Everett, it went to Dallas, Texas. And then the last 3 or 4 years, it went to New York.
Okay.
In New York City, with all their big maps and their wisdom and everything, you look like Chelan and Republic are only about 1.5 inches apart. Well, we're going to send Al Brooks up there today. Or we're going to send him up to get this and then bring him back. There was one time when I left out of 25 Mile Creek on a trouble ticket for Wakanda Pass. One ticket. All it was a phone that was off the hook. Got up there. my next ticket that I was routed on, because then we were routed on a ticket by ticket format and not a full day of workload, was back down to Manson. I got back down to Manson, and my next ticket was up on Sherman Pass. And then from there, went on over to Nighthawk.
Wow.
That's when it no longer became fun.
What year was Ma Bell, the lawsuit that basically broke them up?
That was in the 1990s.
So you were working during...
I was working with GTE. GTE took over a phone company from West Coast Telephone here in about 1967, 66, 67. And then it was General Telephone Company and Electronics is what their full name was, right up until 1993 or 4. And then Verizon came on board. And Verizon was not a established company. That was a new name, new company, but it was actually a GTE company with a new name. And they took it over. And of course, their mindset was in the cell phone industry, and that's where they're at today. They wanted nothing to do with copper. In fact, when I talked to some of the technicians that work around here in the copper wires, which we still have in the ground, where our cables used to be full, you would have to be on a waiting list to get a phone at that time. Now they're only looking at 10 to 15% of being full. There's 80% of the copper wires are not being used. And we still have copper here in the Chelan Valley. It goes across the lake, under the lake, right there at the yacht club, and then furnishes up and down the South Shore. The very first telephone cable to go underground, because when I came here, everything was in the air. It was all copper wire. It was in the air, and it was the party system. The very first underground cable to go in Chelan Valley was at the Manson High School. And it ran from downtown Manson up to the high school, and then went down Totem Pole Road. Because I was there when they first put it in. Lyle Johnson was the coordinator that put it in, the head lineman. And in Manson, right behind the Methodist Church, is a little tiny block building, probably not much bigger than a restroom. That was the very first telephone building in Manson.
Wow.
And then there's one in Mansfield that was so small that you could not go inside of it. In order to work on things inside of it, you had to lay down with your feet sticking out the door. That's how small a building it was in Mansfield.
Wow.
It's funny how long distance was a thing for a long time.
Long distance was the same format. You would call an operator, give her the number or whoever you were trying to call to. Then she would patch you through to a long distance operator, and then from there you'd be connected.
It was expensive. Like call Wenatchee was expensive. You had to dial. And I also was curious about when they went from, when I grew up, it was 73260 was our phone number growing up.
That was 1969 and 70 is when they converted over to what they call dial.
So 5-digit number.
Originally there was only 3 digits. After you went from where you'd ask the operator for a particular person to they were given 3-digit numbers in the valley. I think one of them out there at 25 Mile Creek was like the 741 line. Mansfield stayed that way for a long time. That's how we actually would distinguish where the trouble was at on certain lines, was that they would say the 741 line or the 218 line is crossed with the 219 line, which means that a tumbleweed got up in the wires and had crossed them. So yeah, it was very, very interesting times, interesting people. You got to meet a lot of characters.
Do you remember the pushback when they had to dial 509?
Oh yes, and it's still a pushback.
Yeah.
And now, you you can't dial anywhere without the area code.
Yeah, and so I was like, what? And everybody's like, I got to dial an extra 3 digits. Actually, extra 5 digits, because you had to put I think, didn't they go from like the first, like if it were Chelan, it was a 2 number, and Manson was a 7 number, and then 4 more digits.
Right.
And then you had to dial the 682 or the 687.
And then you had to go to the area code next.
You would have thought that people were making them go out and dig ditches or something.
Because they were all just mad.
It was big time deal.
The complaints, but working for the phone company was one of those really choice jobs where you got to meet so many people and see so much wildlife, which I want to touch base with real briefly on that.
Let's do it.
Because I know you want to do a podcast someday with Jason, and he's the one that's really.
I really want to get into your hunting, because you're the reason through Jason that I started going to Idaho and the Middle Fork and the Frank Church Wilderness, and that was 25 years ago. I think.
That was a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
So we'll move out of the phone industry. We've kind of covered it. I mean, there's a lot of colorful stories out there about the phone company and things that have happened, but maybe another time. But let's move on to the fishing and hunting here in the valley to start with.
Yeah, let's
and
do it.
It all revolved around the Mitchell Creek fire, which I believe was in 1968 and 69. And at that time, it was one of the biggest fires in the state of Washington. And it was a very hard fire to fight because of the amount of dust and dirt. And they actually brought the Army in, and they were camped down there in that big field across from the casino where they're taking out the orchard right now. And they brought them in because they had diesel trucks. And diesel engines can operate in a lot more unfriendly environment as far as smoke and ash and dirt. So they brought them in, and there was a whole big field of them down there. After that fire went through, and there were several people who lost their life in that fire. I know a gentleman by the name of Platt. He actually had a plane that he operated out of that little airport runway alongside the casino. The gravel road at one time was a runway out there.
Right.
And that's where Cascade helicopters were based out of to begin with.
Yeah, they used to do a lot of helicopters for the pesticides in the orchard and sprays. Yeah.
Wow.
Cal Kelly is... let's just put it this way. Cal Kelly, I wish we had him around to do an interview because he's an extraordinary pilot. Yeah. He did things that scared the bejesus out of me, but he was good, and his whole family.
My dad, when he was a kid, was a flagger for them, for the orchards, and he would just get doused with chemicals, like, I was like, did you wear any protective gear? And he goes, huh?
Well, and Alvin Anderson and I have talked about this in the valley. It seemed like a lot of our older people died from cancer. And he really feels a lot of it was because of the sprays and chemicals that we use. Because you would spray without the coverings that you had on now.
Yeah.
Now they have a full rubberized suit with an air pack.
Or you were just stubborn. Like when I farmed with my dad, I'd be like, we should suit up, and he'd be like, you can. But he was just stubborn. He just was like, it takes too long, gets too hot, and I'm like,
well, and the pesticides they were used,
they worked.
They worked too well sometimes.
Yeah.
Because at one time, Manson had a huge population of pheasants. When I first came here, and I was on the tail end of it, Manson was famous for the amount of pheasants it had.
Wow.
But what happened was with those pesticides, they wouldn't reproduce. So the pheasants died off because that made what they call a soft shell on their eggs, and of course they wouldn't. That was
DDT's problem. Yeah.
DDT.
Is that a certain pesticide?
There's quite a story about the DDT. I want to tell you about that. You remember down the street from me, there was a family by the name of Zamzow.
Very much, yeah.
Okay.
Right across
and
the street.
he had the old Arkansas black apple trees. Now, I mean, they're this big around. They're 30 feet in the air.
Yeah.
And if you were a picker, you didn't want to pick in that orchard. You're not going to believe this, but this is documented. The state of Washington, because they were mandated in this lake to put fish habitat. And this was back in the 1990s, mind you. So it wasn't that far back. They contracted with a lot of these orchardists when they pulled their orchards out to bring their trees, and they brought them over on big semis, whole trees, and they put them in the lake.
Yeah,
and Zamzow's trees
are
lined where the ledge of the lake is out here towards Patton Wykes.
Yeah.
They're lined out in the lake, a whole row of them for about a quarter of a mile long, and they were pregnated inside the bark with DDT. And the state never ever even thought about checking for chemicals or to see what was being really put in the lake as far as wood. All they knew was it was a woody structure and it would be great for habitat for fish.
Wow.
And that's a documented
I wonder how long that would last versus.
Well, I'm sure probably by now it's probably broke down because I would say 20 to 30 years and it'd break down. But
wow.
Try doing that now and see what would happen.
No. Oh, you probably can't even throw a stick in the lake right now.
Russ and I would be enjoying cells at the lockup center, that's for sure.
But it's hard to do anything now.
But I can remember that when they came and got their trees and took them over and put them in the lake.
Yeah, Zamzow's, I remember that family. They were there a long time.
They were there a long, long time. Quite a family.
Do you remember when you moved there in Washington Street, where you're at now, when you moved?
I moved into, Sharon and I moved into that in 1991. That was part of the old campus place out in Manson. Marty Morris had bought it from them, and then they had gone ahead and divided it all up. We still had the orchard on the property. We had 1 acre, and then everything else was divided up into either half or 3/4 acres out there. Before that, I lived up in what they call the Old Cornell place, which was across from Blueberry Hills, in which is burned, and I owned that place. First house I ever bought in Manson was for $16,000, and that was from Dale Anderson.
Probably can't find that today.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Rent-wise, I told you the first time I rented was like $45 a month, and clear up until the early 1980s, I was only paying like $65 a month.
Wow, how much it's changed now.
Things have changed, yeah.
But I don't know if you ever remember your folks talking about the gas shortage problem.
In the 70s?
In the 70s. Yeah. But you never went anywhere without an extra gas can in your car or in your truck.
Oh, really?
Because you couldn't get gas. I remember the long lines over on the coast. We would go over and visit relatives on the coast, and we'd take our gas with us.
Wasn't Jimmy Carter the president? And Jimmy Carter, wasn't he the president?
Yes. Yeah.
The oil embargo and gas lines. You'd have lines like, in some of the larger cities, miles long, trying to get fuel, and they'd run out until you.
Was the prices high relative at that point then?
I want to say we were still paying under $1 a gallon. So I don't think it wasn't the price of it; it was the availability of it for the gas. But it was something to behold. And then it solved itself overnight. I don't know how things magically work, but it works.
So then you, after that fire, Mitchell Creek fire, then the camp. When did you start Camp 4?
Well, after the Mitchell Creek fire, the next year the game department, or that winter, the game department wanted to issue 1,000 doe permits for the Manson unit. They felt like they needed to kill 1,000 deer, 1,000 does, to sustain for the winter of that would be 69 and 70.
So I keep asking this because my dad had a reel-to-reel of a deer drive in downtown Manson, and I wonder if it was the fire that burned the habitat so the deer came into the orchard.
Oh, the Mitchell fire?
Yeah.
I'm sure it did. I know that to this day right now we have more deer in downtown Manson than anywhere else. In fact, early in the morning, you better be real careful in driving. And you'll see it between here and Manson. They'll hit at least 1 deer a month on the Manson Highway.
Yeah,
you'll find.
We're neighbors now. And I had a buddy call me up and said, "Hey," in fact, your son called me up and said, "That's some of the best quail hunting in the state."
Yeah.
I don't know, Jason. I don't know if they're going to want you to blow in shotguns.
Well, about a week before you moved in, there were 5 deer on the front lawn of your front lawn in your house.
Another friend of mine contacted me and said, "Hey, could I have bow hunt in your front yard?"
Yeah. But back to the 69, 70, because I was just getting into the hunting realm of it. Now, I hunted in other areas, but I didn't really hunt that much in this area. We established in 72, the Lake Chelan Sportsmen's Association was established. I pretty much was my thing, is what I really wanted to do. I got people involved that were major contributors to it. Bob Watson was one of them, the Clark family, Ed Kearney, the Kellys here at Kelly's Hardware, you name it. And then what happened was the very first thing that kicked it off was those 1,000 doe permits. Mm-hmm. Could not see it. Why are you killing things off that may never come back? Mm. So I had petitions in all the stores. And then along with Dave Lumen and myself, we went over in May when Mount St. Helens erupted. In fact, we were the last car to go over Blewett Pass before they closed it.
Wow.
Because we didn't know it had erupted because we didn't have the radio on. We were on our way down to Olympia to present those petitions, to go before the Game Commission and say that this needs to stop. That you need to put a stoppage to this kind of killing up there. Mm. On our way over Blewett Pass, I turned to Dave, and this was in May. I said, "Dave," I says, "it's snowing outside."
Yeah.
And he says, "You know, you're right." And I said, "Dave, we haven't passed a car now for miles."
Jeez.
And we were on the other side of Blewett Pass, getting down closer to Clell, and there was a roadblock with the state patrol, looking at us like, "Well, how did you guys get here?" Well, they let us go ahead and go on over Snoqualmie because the drift of the ash had moved more southward. And so we got over there, and I can remember the guy standing on the bridge with the rainbow hair, and they were showing the house coming down the Cowlitz River under the bridge and demolishing the house. Oh. I can remember seeing that. Remember getting to Kelso, that was where our meeting was to hold with the Game Commission, and there were Army helicopters flying everywhere.
Wow.
That was in 1980?
I think that was in 1980. I don't recall the exact year.
Yeah.
No, it was...
Was it earlier than that?
It was earlier than that, I believe. You're going to look it up on your phone.
Look it up because now I'm curious.
But anyway, that was like their second or third attempt for these doe permits, and we were trying to shut it down. We had founded the Lake Chelan Sportsmen's Association. I know it was founded in 1972, and it was founded around the Mitchell Creek fire.
Oh, yeah.
Because we wanted to have more input with the game on the lake.
Yeah.
That was May 18th, 1980.
May 8th, okay. So I know Dave and I were going over to the Game Commission to put another stoppage on the permits, because at that time, their answer was, well, let's just eliminate the problem.
Yeah.
Of too many deer and dying without ever looking to see what kind of a winter you're going to have, or being able to carry forward what you can carry forward for animals.
What happened?
Actually, we got everything stopped. We didn't have the winters that they were classifying at that time. Worst winter we've ever had here on record that I can remember was the winter of 95 and 96. Yeah. That was by far the worst winter we've ever had. And there's a story there too, but I'll probably stay off of that one.
I built the house that year, and I remember my dad and Keith Allen and I built the house in 96, and we had to shovel the deck. We put the concrete foundation in, put the floor on, and we had to spend like every day we were trying to frame in that winter. Well, we had to shovel like 2 feet a day. I mean,
in Manson, we had 5 feet of snow at one time on the level.
Wow.
That's 5 feet on the level. And our home where we were at was, you knew you had a serious problem when you couldn't open a door or a window.
Yeah.
The house is being compressed.
Yeah.
And so I went up the street and got a bunch of people to come down and help me. And we shoveled because they were expecting rain that night. Rain on top of 5 feet of snow.
Not good.
That's when the lumber company caved in.
Yeah, in the sheds.
A lot of houses, apple sheds caved in.
Yeah.
Luckily, we got the snow off of our roof, but there was a lot of damage done that 95,
I
96.
bet it made your job interesting.
Well, there actually was some pictures here about a year ago or 6 months ago where people would show the snowdrifts in Mansfield. And we could actually walk on top of the snowdrifts and get down on our knees to get to the wires because the snow was higher than the telephone poles.
Wow.
There's one real particular spot I know of where the drifts were so high that and then there'd be bare ground a quarter of a mile down the road.
Jeez.
We would spend many a night on the back of a telephone truck beating the snow off the wires because it would get so packed that they would break them. Back to the telephone days.
Okay.
But back to the Sportsman deal. Really quick, we'll touch on that. Lake Chelan Sportsman was founded in 1972 by a group of 8 men, all people who either lived here in the valley or had businesses in the valley or worked in the valley. It was set up to support the wildlife and the fisheries in the lake. There was a time in Lake Chelan in the 60s that if you were out fishing on Lake Chelan, you were laughed at because there just was no fish. There was only one strain of fish that was profitable to fish for that you could get, and that was called the burbot, I'm trying to think of the name of the other name for the burbot, but lingcod, freshwater lingcod. And you could have a set line of 100 hooks out here in the lake because there was that many on the bottom. But as far as the kokanee go and the rainbow and the cutthroat, just didn't exist. And because our wildlife and fisheries was so upside down with going wrong directions, we felt as an interesting group we needed to get involved. And before it was over with, before we finally reached our peak, we had about 350 members statewide. Wow. We had a lot of people who held a lot of important positions in the state that were backing us because we were going the right direction with bringing back the fisheries. We brought back the salmon and were introduced to salmon. Salmon were introduced to kind of counterbalance the lake trout, the Mackinaw. Mackinaw were put in the lake because of the mysis shrimp problem. One time we didn't have mysis shrimp. And to give you a little scenario of the fish in the lake, all little fish, no matter usually of what variety, have to rely upon what they call zooplankton for them to live, okay, for them to grow on.
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, the state of Washington decided they were going to put mysis shrimp in the lake. Maybe that would help their growth and provide more food chain for them. And so they got the mysis shrimp out of Canada and brought them in the lake, and not realizing that the mysis shrimp was devouring the zooplankton, so the little fish had nothing to grow on. So, if we're going to do that, we found lake trout or Mackinaw. Well, they love mysis shrimp, so we're going to bring in the lake trout. Well, we're going downhill on a real steep hill here real fast.
Yeah.
And the lake trout just took over this lake. I mean, you can go out here right now in a boat, and I bet you in 20 minutes I can catch you a lake trout.
It's funny also, right now, Joe Heinlein, which he was very involved in a long time, Lake Chelan Adventures, he's recently just retired, and Mark took over, Mark Lippincott. But he was talking about the threat now is they're talking about reintroducing the bull trout. And one of the areas that they were going to put it is at the mouth of the Stehekin. And the bull trout will annihilate all the other species because they're so aggressive. So it's still going on, this cause and effect.
And it's just a terrible circle that is hard to manage. At one time, the bull trout, really the only place you could find bull trout, which are Dolly Varden is another name for them, was in the Stehekin River. And up until the 1990s, there were still a few in the Stehekin River, but they just became in existence.
Like Joe's point was, there was a reason for that, and nature did its thing, and so he's very against the idea because he believes he thinks the fisheries are as good as they've ever been in a lot of ways. We have a lot of almost too many cutthroat, and I mean the rainbow trout has taken a hit. It's a good, interesting. I think you'd like that podcast.
Yeah, you'd really like it.
Joe and I were guides together.
Oh yeah.
I when I wasn't working for the phone company or working up at the cemetery, I was a fishing guide with Anton Jones. Had Daryl and Dad's, and Joe and I worked for him before Joe went out on his own, and I decided I didn't want to spend all my time on weekends guiding people around.
Yeah, well, it's a fascinating subject, right?
But it's really the fisheries in the lake and the wildlife in the valley is a real interesting thing. Back to the sportsman's group. So the sportsman's group was involved in trying to turn this whole circle around to where we could get a balance in the lake. We brought in the salmon. We raised salmon out at the Cove Marina in big fish nets. There are still salmon in the lake. Joe was still catching salmon up until a year ago, which I believe he's moved down to Kelso now. Yeah. And the salmon will probably exist in the lake forever, just because they spawn at a different time and they do well, especially in the upper lake areas.
What's your favorite fish to catch?
Well, the salmon in the river would be one because of the thrill of it.
Yeah.
As far as eating and table fare, probably the burbot because it's a white flaky meat like a walleye. If you have ever had a chance to eat walleye, you need to, because it's as close to fish and chips as you're going to get.
Oh, that's cool.
It's white, it's flaky, it's got good taste to it. But here in the lake, I like the cutthroats real well. Cutthroats are a fish that don't do well down in this part of the lake. They have to have structure in order to live, to combat with the other fisheries that are in the lake. Your top predator in the lake right now, of course, is the Mackinaw or lake trout. And if you've ever seen one or ever caught one, you can see why. They've got teeth that are an inch to an inch and a half long. Jeez. On your larger fish. They devour everything. And a real quick subject on that is we used to have a fishing tournament here in the lake.
I remember that, yeah.
And it was held right down here by the old ship and shore is where we had it, our headquarters. And we had Art Viola, who was the biologist for the state. He would be there to take fish samples. And they actually, and this is actually documented, they brought a lake trout in, and when we opened it up, it actually had a golf ball in its insides.
What?
It had an actual golf ball inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But and as a sportsman's group, we sponsored the fishing tournament.
Yeah.
Our top prize was $18,000 going out to the top fishermen for the largest fish.
Big money.
And we paid all the way down to, I think, 20th place. Wow. And then we gave out a tremendous amount of prizes, fish equipment, fish finders, you name it.
Nice.
We did that up until about, I want to say about 1999, 2000. And then salmon were getting a lot harder to catch and get. We were getting a lot of rebuttal from people who wanted to have a fishing tournament but wanted to catch fish to put into it. So we switched over to the Mackinaw. Yeah. And I believe the largest Mackinaw that has come out of the lake now is at 36 pounds. But we would have that tournament. We had that tournament for about 5 or 6 years. Unfortunately for the sportsman's group, as you see in a tremendous amount of groups here in the valley, it just kind of revolves around that if you don't have a project or you don't have a controversy going on, people kind of lose direction on where they're going. Also, age was becoming a part of it. Like I said, I'll be 80 at the end of this year, and it got to the point where we got down to just a few members left, 12 to 14 members. As they moved away or they died off, then of course the sportsman's group kind of died off too.
Yeah, we talked about that with Rich Uhlhorn on the podcast where they had the Recreation Association. He talked about the same thing. It's all based on the energy of the volunteers.
And you'll see it nowadays. How many kids do you see involved nowadays with outdoor activities, other than just maybe some of the sports in the school districts?
Yeah.
we had the kids fishing pond at the golf course. I was instrumental with the Clark family and the Kearney family of getting that started. And that went over for years and years.
Fun.
We ran that for like 32 years straight.
Wow.
Yeah, take the kids up there.
And we had it on the one day that every woman hated. It was Mother's Day.
I was going to say that.
Yes, Mother's Day. But it was great. We would line that pond up there shoulder to shoulder with kids. And every kid got a prize. It was one of the big things the Sportsman's Group did to get kids involved with outdoor activities.
Yeah.
One of the other last things I'll mention is that we also started the bighorn sheep on the lake. We have a plant of bighorn sheep on the North Shore, roughly about 50, well, there was about 50, 55. It got as high as about 80, but now they're coming back down in numbers because we have a tremendous amount of predators.
Cougars.
And so the between the cats and the bears and you name it, they've started declining some.
And the wolves.
And wolves. A lot of your viewers, and this probably hasn't been brought up in a lot of your podcasts, but Lake Chelan was famous for its mountain goats. Okay, we had a huge population of mountain goats. High school motto is the goats. Well, in the 1960s, it started declining. At one time, you could get on the Lady of the Lake, go up lake, and you could count the mountain goats almost any time of the year. In 1960s, we started seeing a decline. And we started seeing a rapid decline down to where there was probably less than 60 or 70 on the North Shore and probably half that amount on the South Shore.
Wow.
I got involved with Cal Kelly through the Sportsman's Group of doing helicopter flights where we do surveys and could not figure out what the mortality was going on with the goats. And what we finally came up with, there was a biologist for the department named John Musser out of Wenatchee. And he lived and died wildlife, and especially Lake Chelan. And his big thing was goats. And what they found out was the goats were dying off from a parasite that was dropped by the sheep back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They used to have huge bands of sheep on the lake. There's pictures around town in different establishments of the sheep being put on the barges. And I can remember where I believe Gevers had a sheep drive back, I want to say about 1992 or 3, where they brought these Basques in from Spain, the men from Spain in, and they had their dogs, and they did a sheep deal from Anlon Lake, where there's a big corral, all the way to South Navarre. All summer long, they worked their way up to South Navarre, and then that's where they loaded them up and for the winter time, picked them up. But they found that through the droppings in the sheep, the domesticated sheep, it was causing the mountain goats to pick up a parasite, and that's what that was what was
interesting.
Their demise.
I never heard that.
Wow, yeah, I didn't either.
And that's also documented in the state. So that's where we're at. And the goats really have never ever come back because of the fires. One last thing I'll try to touch on a little bit is on the fires. The reason why we have so much local deer population is deer, like almost any animal, they need 3 things to survive. They need to have water, they need to have food, but the main thing is they need cover. And of course, the escapement from predators.
Yeah.
Our predators have changed. We've had from the cougars and the bears to the wolves. There have been wolf sightings, and I have actually seen wolves up at Crow Cabin. I've actually had them walk beside me about 50 yards out in the forest, a pair of them. I thought they were the biggest dog I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And I was carrying an .6 at the time, and it was loaded. Afraid that they were going to come for me, but they were just curious, and they were out there off to the side. But now you've got more predators than we actually have. And what will happen with that is a lot of people will say, you know, oh, the poor deer, this or that. It's just kind of like the roller coaster effect. The deer are up here, the predators are down here. The predators are up here, the deer are down here. one follows the other. And as there's no game for them, then of course they're going to move out of the area for them to feed on. But right now in the Manson area, I can take you out many places and show you a lot of deer.
Yeah.
And the wolves are different. The wolves have moved in close too. I've got, in our real estate travels, we get people that have told me personally that they're all around. I mean, they're that population, and there's no predators for them. So
no, there's no predator except for a cat. Once in a while, will take on a wolf if it's out.
But not a wolf pack.
Not a wolf pack, but a single wolf.
Tell me about the deer hunting back when you were.
Well, the deer hunting back in those days was really, really good.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. That's a mile way to put it.
Yeah.
When starting out, when I had the boys and they were so young, we relied upon venison as a staple in our diet and our food. But moving on after that, you got to be more of a choice hunter. There were a lot of times when I would not come back from a hunting trip. Idaho, as expensive as it is, there were many trips I'd come back from Idaho without a deer, because I'm not a person who's going to just go out and kill something to kill something. Okay? If I don't have a need for it and it's not what I want, I'm not going to kill it. I'm not that type of human being. And I tried to pass that on to my boys, and they've done a pretty good job of it. And Russ has also. Love elk meat. I'll take a nice elk any day.
I'll take an elk too.
Yeah.
But as far as hunting goes, you could go almost anywhere here in the Chelan Valley, Chelan Basin area, and get your animal. You might have to put a little extra more into it. I could never figure out how the people from the west side always went home and complained about not seeing any deer. But then again, I guess maybe they stayed in their parties and didn't get out.
Stayed in the camp.
But
tell me about your trips to Idaho. What did it mean to you?
Well, it started going to Idaho in the late 80s.
Did you go to Thomas Creek in the?
Thomas Creek was our pretty much our only destination. I did go on up to Cabin Creek and also went up to Big Creek, but mainly out of Thomas Creek. And the first time I went into Thomas Creek was with Terry Dow, Daryl Shin, myself, Ron Sloan, and Barry Croce. And we went into Thomas Creek. And the first thing Ron told us, because he had been in there several times before, is do not shoot the first deer you see. And we landed on the runway. We were only one of 3 tents in there, 3 camps. One camp had 2 people and one camp had 1 person, and we were the big party tent. And it was in an old Army tent, which if you needed to go out and relieve yourself, you couldn't find the door at night. It was made for real interesting exits. But no, landed, set everything up. We said, okay, we're going to go out and venture around. In a 3-hour period, I would see as high as 35 bucks and 75 to 100 does.
Whoa.
Because Thomas Creek was a wintering grounds for a lot of your animals. We actually did not, at one time, Russ, we did not have any elk there. Really? There was no elk at Thomas Creek. It was almost all deer. No predators as far as wolves go. Yeah, there was an occasional cat, but very, very few cats.
Things have changed.
And times have changed. And of course, we all came home with our deer. And in the first 3 or 4 trips, we've always come home with our deer. But it's a young man's game in Idaho. You pack everything on your back. You walk a lot of miles. You make sure you've got good footwear and good backup footwear. You take care of your feet, because there's been many a time I've seen hunters that came in that were new and green, and after the second day they couldn't hunt. Now here they've paid $4, $5, $6, $7, $800 to be in there, and they have to sit in camp because they can't walk. You have to ask yourself, why?
Before my daughter got married, her boyfriend, they'd dated a while, and I've been going in there a long time. I don't remember what year it was, but probably, I think I started 25 years ago, somewhere there. And I said, well, I'm going to take him hunting to Thomas Creek, and we're going to find out what kind of boy you're dating? And she's like, Dad, I go, a lot of things can happen in the backcountry. So I got her all worried. And he did great, but it reminded me because he had the worst blisters I've ever seen. And that kid was so tough. Luckily he brought some bandages and stuff, but he never whined, never complained, and he just kept walking. And he had the worst one.
Oh my goodness!
I felt kind of bad, but in a way, it was like breaking the greenhorn in, right? Like making sure you had the tough one.
Well, we got married to moleskin, because nobody ever went out without having that in your backpack, or they call it second skin. But you can start to get a hot spot on your foot, and you stopped and you took care of your feet, because they're going to take you there and they're going to get you back.
Yep.
But the hunting over there was phenomenal. One, it was the only place I could hunt, and maybe hunt all day and never see another human being. Not another human being. You came back in at night. If you wanted to take the next day off, you had hot springs where you'd go down and take your cold drink, whatever it was, a choice, and sit down in the hot springs, and it felt like $1 million. And where else can you get a hot bath and then go back up and just kind of rest and then be ready to go the next day? And then, of course, everything was packed on your back. You got an animal back 10, 12, 14 miles. One time, Jason and I were so far back, we were over on Pongo and had gone clear to Baldy Mountain, chasing elk. And I turned to Jason and I said, Jason, if we shoot anything back here, we're going to have to eat it right here, because there's no way we're going to get it back.
Yeah.
So we started moving ourselves back closer to the camp.
Now, did you ever find the water on Pongo that Jason swears he's found?
Well, I know where it's at.
Well, I'm going to have to get with you, because he gave me a map and I looked for it, and I'm like,
well,
I don't know if you guys are right about this.
If you're going up Pongo, you get to what they call the saddle. And it's right there in the saddle on the I would say the south slope side.
Coming out of a rock, right?
And it actually comes out of a bunch of grass and bushes and a little rock.
That's gold, though.
Well, people I think I've heard have kind of dug it out a little bit, so they can get some of the water out of there.
That's the whole key to you can't without water.
We always went with plenty of water on our back.
The pet carried it.
You have to keep yourself. You got to drink a lot.
Well, you got to go deeper these days than you used to get the bigger deer. You have to go deep.
You have to go deep
nowadays.
I was one of the ones with Ron Sloan when we took the young Gobo boy in who had a plane accident up on Stevens Pass. I was with Ron, and I actually carried the sign up where we have his memorial up on. It's up. I'm trying to think of the exact location of it, but it's up off of the lookout, the Thomas Lookout.
In Mahoney.
Mahoney. And it's up on that ridge that would be to the right or
like
between.
Range Creek?
You go up Range Creek and then go to the right, and it's on that ridge up there. Yeah. And I can remember taking that up and how sad that was for us to take that up, because Gobles had hunted in there also, both Gary and his son, and with Ron.
Yeah.
But wonderful people in there. I had a very bad accident in there. I was up on Scarface Mountain. I had a deer in front of me out there a couple hundred yards across the canyon. I was on a snow slope, and this is one of the only accidents I've really ever had in the wild. But I had a grassy slope with about a foot of snow on it, going down for about 200 to 300 yards in front of me, and the deer was across the canyon. It was a beautiful buck, and I know I had to have hit it, but all hell broke loose. I had made the mistake. There was a small little pine tree about 5 or 6 feet high, and I put my foot around the backside of the pine tree to get a better rest. When I shot, that foot went out, I hung up in the tree, and then released me, and I went down 300 yards down that open slope.
Ooh.
When I got to the bottom, I had pulled my Achilles tendon.
Ooh.
And I'm back 4,000 to 5,000 feet in elevation, and I'm back about 8 or 9 miles from base camp. Terry and I had put a spike camp in about 3 miles away on a ridge line, and I had to crawl the entire distance back to our to our on my hands and knees. It took me all day and part of the evening to get back to the tent. And when I got to the tent, Terry had just come in before me, and he says, "What's wrong, Alan?" And I says, "I have either broke my ankle or I have really messed my foot up," not knowing it was the Achilles tendon.
You can only get there by plane.
Yeah.
You can only get there. It's really remote. Thomas Creek was established by the family out of Lake Tahoe. The Harris family. It's a big ranch. I have met a lot of movie stars in there over the years. Mm-hmm. Henry Winkler was one of them. I can't think of the gentleman's name now. Was another one, and he actually came down and drank all our beer one night down at our tent. Anyway, so I ended up. He went ahead of me. I went as best as I could coming down to get the guys from base camp to come up to help get me out. Mm-hmm. They found me just on the other side of the packed ridge there at Thomas Creek Guard Station, on my hands and knees. They took me over in front of the tent, and we had a guy that was in camp that was a athletic for the New York Yankees.
Pitcher.
Like a
trainer?
A trainer for the New York Yankees. He came over and he said, "Well, the first thing we need to do," because there was ice coming down the middle fork of the Salmon River in big ice chunks, he says, "We need to go out and get a pail of water, grab that pail, and we need to put his foot in that pail of water." But he says, before we do that, you get the pail of water and get all set up. He says, "When I go to cut his boot strings, it's just going to pop open, and that swelling is just going to go," because I never took my shoe off. Right. I knew not to. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, as soon as he did, it was like screaming like you can't believe. I know what a woman feels like when she's giving childbirth now. And they put that foot in that ice water. Yeah. And that was the smart thing. It took me a whole week, 7 days, to get back to where I could just hobble along. Mm-hmm. And in that time, I shot the biggest deer of my life. That time. That's funny. Because the game warden felt so sorry for me. Aww. And he had come in on horseback, and he had come down from Indian Creek and said, "You know, I just passed a big herd of deer, and there was a buck in there that was a 180 to 190 buck." And he saw how bad I was, and he says, "I'll tell you what, I'll help you get up there." And so I was able to ride partway up on horseback. Yeah. And he had to come out. And sure enough, I was sitting underneath a pine tree, and I said a little prayer to the Lord, because I said I knew I was all done hunting. I said, if there's an animal around that I can take, I would love to take one home. And all the deer in this field in front of me stood up.
Wow.
And there he was right in the middle. And the rest was history.
That's crazy.
That's a great story.
So to wrap this up really quick, I'm Alan Brooks. I love this valley. I will be buried in this valley when that day comes. The people on it are genuine. Mm-hmm. I can't say enough about all the people I've met. I run into people in the cemetery where I work part-time now who I have conversations with because I remember them so well. Yeah. And I'd like to thank both of you for helping put this podcast on. Yeah. This is something that I'll touch on real briefly.
Please, yeah.
I was hoping that something like this would come along because I had mentioned back when I was with the Sportsman's Group to one of the people who was on the city council at that time that it would be really great if the city of Chelan would take a portion of Don Morris Park and build a wall, make a wall in there with just the name of the people and maybe the date they served or lived in this valley as a remembrance, because there's people in here who have gave their entire life. I came along in my 20s and now I'm in my 80s. I'm a youngster compared to a lot of these people, but it would be nice to be able to have that. Yeah. So when the grandchildren come along and say, look, there's granddad, grandpa up there,
we have an
or
idea.
so and so.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Manson has their tree on the side of the building, but it would be nice as a valley including Manson, the South Shore, the 25 Mile Creek area, the Valley area, up at Stehekin area, to have a wall built with just a short little plaque.
That would be cool.
With their name, maybe what they did. I could put, like under mine, I was a telephone technician or telephone climber, whatever. But like Ray Courtney is a Packer, and no one is a Packer.
Yeah.
It would be so great to be able to have that wall to walk along and see these people. And it would not be that expensive to construct a wall, an awful lot like the Vietnam Memorial Wall, only it doesn't need to be that fancy as far as material goes. But to have a wall that would have the names of the people, your folks, Russ, that gave so much to the valley.
Yeah.
His mom worked at the bank for years. I can remember his mom so well.
Yeah.
And his dad. Went to a basketball game with your dad.
Did you?
You couldn't hear a word in the car that we were talking to him, but he was all smiles.
Always smile. Yeah. Well, he loved living out there in Manson, and now that I'm a quarter mile from where I grew up.
And what's really sad for us who are living in this valley, who knew this valley as what it once was, and I know that it's becoming more of a vacation hub for people, but what was so sad is to see the amount of orchards that are now coming out.
Yeah.
And a gentleman I work with up at the cemetery, Jamie Cooper, made a statement this last week, and he says, Alan, in 10 to 20 years, there won't be an apple tree left in Chelan.
Yeah, and I think we always mention this, but it's important to remember that most of the orchards coming out aren't by choice. They're by economics.
Economics, we saw it when back on our farm days when we were raising layer chickens or layers. Bigger was always squeezing out the smaller. At the time your folks, Russ, were here and farming, little farms is what made up the valley.
Yeah.
It's what made it up the valley. You didn't have to have 100 acres.
You raised 3 kids on 10 acres.
Raise kids on 10 acres.
Yeah.
But look at the economics now. You couldn't,
It's not working.
And even the bigger
so
people
sad.
are having a very hard
It's
time.
not working right now.
No.
Well, Al, it's an honor and a privilege to have you here, my friend.
I've appreciated listening to all of this.
We've talked for so long that I'm afraid that you probably run out of tape for the podcast.
No, we can't run out of tape. We've got endless.
Go. And it's also, I feel very grateful to be your neighbor now, my friend.
Well, I feel very grateful to be a part of this, to be a part of the valley. When I leave here,
now we got this.
Yeah, I got a few more years left in me.
Well, we'll come back and do another one too.
I love that. I'd love to have you do one with my son Jason sometime.
Oh, I will. He's
a character.
He'll tell you some stories.
If you think I can talk a lot, and I'm talking just off without no script.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it is unscripted. I mean,
this is totally an unscripted story, and there are so many more that I have not told.
Well, great. We'll have to have you back on. You haven't watched any of the other podcasts, have you?
No, I would need to access that. So I need to know how on YouTube I can access
your podcast. You're going to
podcast.
love watching some of them. There's some. There's a lot of phenomenal ones. But
you just go to youtube.com on your computer, right?
Okay.
And then just in the search bar, type in Small Towns Unscripted.
Well, I can do it on my TV because that's how I got to that turkey one we did.
Yeah.
I just said Brooks Family Turkey Hunt in Idaho on YouTube, and it came right up. So I'll do your
well, you got 65 to catch up on, so you better get busy.
Well, there are probably a lot of people who have told a lot more stories than I have, or the same stories.
It was awesome.
No, again, I know I've taken up all your time for your business and everything, but we really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
This is something I was really hoping would happen.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just say one last thing, and that is to my wife, I love you so much.
That's the best way to end it.
With that, we're signing off from Small Towns Unscripted.